shall be together again.
Broadway comes to Paris thanks to Funny Girl. Children's literary favourite Warhorse is on stage here in France, and a new exhibition celebrates the long-lasting legacy of Charlie Chaplin. We're kicking off the show with a classic musical. Well, it's a genre that's often been relegated to the sidelines of the French theatre scene, but now a string of English language shows are putting all singing, all dancing revivals in the spotlight. The latest is a sparkling new version of Funny Girl from British director and choreographer Stephen Mear. Performer Christina Bianco takes on the lead role of Fanny Brice with flair and pizzazz. Pierre Delrieux tells us more.
It's a cult classic across the pond, but now with Christina Bianco in the starring role, Funny Girl comes to Paris, bringing unforgettable scores like I'm the Greatest Star, Don't Rain on My Parade, and People.
Lovers are very special people. They're the luckiest people in the world.
A musical based on the life of Fanny Brice, an awkward Jewish girl who rose to stardom in the early 20th century, conquering Hollywood with her humor, talent, and incredible self-confidence. A role famously played on stage and on screen by the legend Barbra Streisand.
Don't tell me not to fly. I simply got to. If someone takes a...
Streisand won an Academy Award in 1969 for her rendition of Fanny Brice on screen. A tough act to follow for sure, but American actor, singer, and impersonator Christina Bianco rose to the challenge.
The most difficult thing was unlearning some of Barbra Streisand's choices as an actor, as a singer. I have her voice and her face and her line delivery in my head, so I had to strip that. I had to get away from the movie and my memories of the show and go back and read the script with fresh eyes and listen to the music with fresh ears.
The artistic director of the Marigny Theatre, Jean-Luc Choplin, recruited Bianco after just one audition.
She sweeps you off your feet. She's a whirlwind on stage and in real life.
With her own pitch-perfect comic and vocal abilities, Christina Bianco has the star quality to portray the character's stellar appeal. And the entire cast, singers and dancers rise up to her level.
We're staying with the stage next for a show with a little literary inspiration. The children's novel Warhorse is a much-loved classic in its native Britain, and now it's coming to France for the first time in musical form. Author Michael Morpurgo's story centres on a horse sent to the front line during the First World War. It's being performed at the Scène Musicale venue in the southwest of Paris. Camille Nedelec has more.
It's the story of a friendship between a British teenager called Albert and Joey, his horse, and his best friend. But in 1914, the friends are separated.
We shall be together again.
Joey is sold to the cavalry and travels to France, where he witnesses the horrors of war.
Come on, Joey, come on.
His character is played by 3 people, moving in sync as they manipulate a huge puppet.
Fascinating, really, because we can't actually talk, especially when we're on stage, because we've got a microphone on. So if we would speak, the audience would hear that. So it is picking up on each other's instincts.
The play is based on a novel by much-loved children's author Michael Morpurgo. For him, the puppets add another layer to his story.
You see a horse with 3 men and or women inside making it work. It makes you smile, you know. That's what I thought. But what I didn't realize was the power of these puppets, because they're sculptures, they're moving sculptures, which somehow represent the spirit of a horse.
The puppeteers train for 2 months to learn to move the puppets so that the audience forgets them even though they remain in view. Each movement of the puppet is imbued with emotion and life.
No, 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 move, move! God!
That technically we can operate and move out to suggest dynamic flight. But just the slight movement of these wings, or the rhythm of that, can suggest what the goose is feeling or what the goose is thinking.
The result on stage is striking.
It's a very beautiful, poetic show that's technically brilliant.
War Horse isn't just a story of war, but also a story of longing for peace and a homage to the many men and horses who died at the front.
He was known as the Little Tramp, or Charlot, here in France. Charlie Chaplin went from street urchin to cultural icon and went down in history as a comic genius. Often cited as a reference by performers of all stripes, the actor, director and producer was a true trendsetter in his day. Chaplin's legacy is now being explored in an exhibition at a museum in Nantes, here in France. On display, hundreds of pieces by dozens of artists inspired by the comedian. Our reporters went to take a look.
Charlie Chaplin remains a household name for his lovable slapstick humour. But in his day, as well as being a commercial success, he also inspired an entire generation of artists, such as poet Jacques Prévert and the painter Marc Chagall. Part of the secret of his success was perhaps his timing. Chaplin graced the silver screen in the middle of the First World War, right when audiences were most in need of laughter. French poet Guillaume Apollinaire took his friend Fernand Léger, a Cubist painter, to see a Chaplin film. Léger's paintings depict bodies deconstructed into their separate parts, like pieces of a machine. Chaplin's films had a huge impact on the artist.
He's fascinated by the mechanics of this character, who moves almost like a dancer. He's a Cubist figure brought to life. Léger viewed Chaplin's character as a succession of rectangular shapes.
Léger even made Chaplin the central character of his only film, The Mechanical Ballet. Soviet artists also fell for the actor's charms. They viewed him as a man of the future, creating a new world. The subversive and anti-bourgeois Dada movement embraced the comic as well, along with the surrealists such as Salvador Dali. Charlie Chaplin's popularity with so many diverse movements was perhaps in part thanks to his ability to explore the big questions of his time with levity and wit.
Well, for many, she sums up the opulence and the decadence of the end of the French monarchy. Marie Antoinette became an object of admiration and contempt when she got engaged to King Louis XVI. The former Archduchess of Austria continues to fascinate people some 250 years later. Here in Paris, the Conciergerie is staging an exhibition about the woman who was to be the last Queen of France. Yenna Lee and Firas Gossa went to take a look.
This is the former prison where Marie Antoinette was incarcerated during the last 10 weeks of her life. The Conciergerie has opened an exhibition exploring how the Queen's image has evolved over time, from official paintings to contemporary portrayals.
This exhibition shows the huge quantity of portrayals of Marie Antoinette in several different formats. It means she's really omnipresent in our culture. She's really become a pop icon. We can see her in multiple representations, such as in this painting by Fernando Botero, or we can see her through the eyes of the Latin American artist.
Pierre and Gilles chose to depict escort-turned-actor Zahir Dehar as the modern-day Marie Antoinette. Japanese photographer Kimiko Yoshida, meanwhile, opted for self-portrait. In the world of cinema, Sofia Coppola's biopic portrays her not as a spoiled outsider, but as a young woman in an unhappy marriage far from home.
I discovered her through Sofia Coppola's film. It was really interesting for me to see a character who was so modern.
I'd say she'd be multifaceted because she gave different sides to her personality. Maybe she was a good mother or a doting sister, but all in all, just like the ones we see in royalty today very interesting.
Marie Antoinette's larger-than-life personality, influence on fashion, and ultimately her gruesome death continue to fascinate the public. The Conciergerie has put together 200 works to trace the last Queen of France's journey from maligned queen to pop icon, including this replica of a jewel that Marie Antoinette never actually owned. Deceptively called the Queen's Necklace, it's just another example of how perception can define a person.
Well, we're wrapping up the show with the annual explosion of light in Lyon, a scintillating festival which illuminates the darkest time of the year. The Fête des Lumières sees the whole city lit up with imagery and installations beamed onto the town's historical facades. The four-day event attracted 1.8 million visitors last year, so we'll leave you with a glimpse of Lyon by night. Do remember you can get more arts and culture on our website, and you can keep up with us on social media too. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.